The first time I laid eyes on the apartment building, I knew something was off. It stood at the end of a long, dimly lit street, like a sentinel guarding a dark secret. The windows were shattered, and the paint peeled away in jagged strips, revealing the building's decaying facade. Despite its decrepit appearance, it was the only place I could afford, so I signed the lease and moved in. The first night was restless. I heard strange noises echoing through the empty corridors. Whispers, like faint, agonized cries, echoed in the darkness. I tried to dismiss them as the product of an overactive imagination, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. As days turned into weeks, the apartment revealed its true nature. It had a malevolent energy that seemed to seep into every corner. Shadows danced on the walls at night, casting eerie shapes that seemed to reach out for me. I would wake up to find my belongings rearranged, as though someone had been in my apartment while I slept. But the locks were intact, and there were no signs of forced entry. One evening, I ventured into the basement, hoping to find the source of the haunting whispers. The air grew colder as I descended the narrow, rickety stairs. The basement was a labyrinth of decaying boxes and forgotten relics. In the dim light, I saw something that made my heart stop. A dusty, old photograph of me, taken from my own living room. I had never taken such a photo, nor had anyone else been inside my apartment. Terrified, I raced back upstairs and tried to contact the building's landlord. But the phone lines were dead, and my attempts to reach out to the neighbors were met with silence. It was as if the world had forgotten about this forsaken place. Each night, the haunting grew worse. I would wake up to find scratches on my walls and blood-red symbols etched into the floor. Whispers turned into tortured screams, and I could no longer deny that something malevolent lurked within these walls. One night, as I lay paralyzed in my bed, I saw it, a shadowy figure, gaunt and twisted, hovering above me. Its eyes were hollow pits of darkness, and its bony fingers reached for my throat. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. All I could do was stare into those soulless eyes as they drew closer. But then, a blinding light filled the room, and the figure dissipated like smoke. I gasped for air, drenched in sweat. It was a reprieve, but I knew it wouldn't last. Desperation drove me to research the history of the building. What I discovered was a tale of unspeakable horror. Decades ago, the apartment had been home to a notorious serial killer who had lured victims into his lair, where he tortured and murdered them. The building had been abandoned ever since, cursed by the malevolent spirits of those who had met their gruesome end within its walls. I had to find a way out, but every attempt to leave was met with failure. The doors wouldn't budge, and the windows were sealed shut. I was trapped in this nightmare, with no escape in sight. As the days turned into weeks, I became a hollow shell of my former self. The relentless torment had driven me to the brink of madness. I could no longer distinguish between reality and the horrors that lurked in the shadows. Then, one fateful night, as I lay in my bed, the walls themselves seemed to come alive. They pulsed with a malevolent energy, closing in on me. I screamed, but there was no one to hear. The room grew smaller and smaller, until it felt like a tomb closing in on me. And then, with a deafening crash, it all stopped. I found myself lying on the floor, gasping for breath. The walls had returned to their normal state, as though nothing had happened. I knew I couldn't endure this torment any longer. With renewed determination, I searched for a way to break the curse. I scoured old books and manuscripts, seeking a solution that might save me from this living nightmare. Finally, I discovered a ritual that could banish the malevolent spirits once and for all. It required a desperate act, one that would risk everything. But I had no other choice. With trembling hands, I gathered the necessary items and performed the ritual. The apartment shook with fury, and the shadows howled in protest. But as I chanted the final incantation, a blinding light erupted, purging the darkness from every corner. When the light subsided, I found myself standing in the empty, dilapidated apartment. But it was different, peaceful. The malevolent presence was gone. I left that place and never looked back, haunted by the horrors I had endured. The apartment building still stands, a decaying relic of its sinister past. I warn anyone who considers moving there. Beware the whispers, for they may be the last thing you ever hear.